there, it's Edwina Dixon, and if you have ever wondered about whether there's actually a return on investment to doing household chores and tasks, well, this is a video for you. We are going to be breaking down whether you doing the cleaning, the cooking, the gardening is really actually worth it. So stick around. Before we dive in, as I mentioned, this is my channel. I'm Edwina Dixon. I've spent many years as a mortgage and finance professional for over a decade actually, and I have learned a lot of things over that time. Now, before I became a mortgage broker, I actually spent almost a decade working at the Mathematical Sciences Institute at the University of Melbourne, working with a lot of PhD students in the mathematical sciences. So I've been around numbers for a long time, and I really have quite a good understanding of how those numbers can be manipulated to be able to be worked better for you and your particular situation. So let's dive in. So how do we understand what ROI means in simple terms, especially when it comes to doing household tasks? So ROI is return on investment. Now, when it comes to household tasks, that usually means our time. One of the greatest things that we've ever seen in marketing and advertising, especially when it comes to things like the invention of a vacuum cleaner or a dishwasher, is that this idea of if we use these appliances, that will give us back more of our time to be able to spend it doing things we want to do and that we value more than those household chores. So this is where a return on investment actually starts to come into play. A return on investment really means whatever you're putting into that thing and then you're getting out of it. So for household chores, is it a case of how much time you're actually spending doing it? Is it worth it? Are you getting a good outcome for it? So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, it takes me an hour to wash the dishes. At the end of that, sure, you've got clean dishes, but was that a really great outcome and worth that 1 hour of your time? As opposed to, let's say you have a dishwasher and instead of spending an hour hand washing dishes, you stack the dishwasher for say 5 minutes. All of a sudden you have 55 minutes of free time to do something else. Now, that doesn't mean going off and doing another job or another household chore. Ideally, or at least what we've been sold, is that that time is then a valuable, precious time that you can then spend with your family and friends, actually creating memories and doing fun things with your life. So how do we then look at whether it is a really good return on investment for you specifically? One of the easiest ways to do this is actually to look at how much you get paid to do your job at work. So you possibly can pull up your payslip, and on that payslip it will tell you what your hourly rate is. If it doesn't tell you how much you're being paid per hour, you can always work it out. And the simple way to work that out is to take whatever that net income is, how much is getting put into your bank account every week, fortnight, month, and then divide it by how many hours you actually work. Remembering that most of the time you don't get paid to have a lunch break, so remove that from your hours worked as well. Once you've got that big figure that you're actually getting paid every, let's say, week, divided by how many hours you work per week, let's assume 38, you would then have your per hour rate. And that's how much you're earning per hour. Now, if you then take that figure and apply that to household chores like cleaning and washing and gardening, then you start to get a better sense of whether it's really worth your time, or perhaps your time would be better served spending it with your friends and family and creating those memories. And at that point, you might then decide, you know what, instead of you being the one that cleans your house, because it's going to take you 8 hours to clean your house, you're better spent hanging out with your family and really creating those memories, especially if you've got young children, and instead employing a cleaner to come in for 8 hours. It means that Yes, some of your income is going towards a cleaner, but the trade-off is that you get to spend more time with your family. This is where I think it gets quite interesting as we try to work out the return on investment when it comes to household chores, because it does then mean that you have to take into account, are you actually then going to do those things? Because if you're going to engage a cleaner to come in and clean your house, and let's say it takes them 8 hours to clean your house once a week, and in 8 hours you might earn, let's say, $1,000. It costs the cleaner $500 to come into your home. Therefore, there's a $500 cost to you to have that cleaner come in. But what we want to make sure of is that in that time that you're getting back, you're actually then creating memories, or it's bringing you a really clear sense of joy and a happier place for you mentally and emotionally. And at that point, then maybe that financial exchange is actually worth it. Let's also perhaps look at a different option. So perhaps having a cleaner come into your home isn't necessarily the right option for you because maybe you don't want somebody to come into your house, and that's fair enough. Perhaps then you're looking at something like getting a robot vacuum cleaner. Now, some of these are very expensive, and I can tell you from personal experience that there are some that are over $2,000. Now, this is a lot for a vacuum cleaner because you could go to Kmart and pick up a vacuum cleaner for $100. Or you could get a vacuum cleaner that has lots of different bells and whistles and does all sorts of amazing things and is somewhat remote controlled-ish, but you still have to stand there for about $600 or $700. Or you could get a robot vacuum cleaner. You know, like the Roombas things that like zip around the place. One of those. Now, if you get one of those, some of them are really expensive. And really for some of them, those are all about vacuuming and mopping at the same time. Now, how do you then decide whether something like this is actually going to be a worthwhile return on investment for you and for your family? The way we worked it out, we decided that we sat down and we worked out how often do we currently vacuum our whole house and who's spending the time doing it. Was it my husband or was it myself? Now, for our family, I do most of the vacuuming because he doesn't like doing vacuuming. He does all of the cooking, so it's a fair trade, I think. But I spent most of the time doing the vacuuming. My hourly rate is higher than what his hourly rate is at the time. What we then looked at was how often was I vacuuming? And was I vacuuming enough? Would I need to be vacuuming more? Or would we ideally like to be vacuuming more? Was the job that a robot vacuum cleaner going to do any better or worse than the job that I was doing? Now, I am not a domestic goddess at all. And so it was very clear that if we got a robot vacuum cleaner, one, our house would probably get vacuumed a bit more often. We decided that the app for the robot vacuum cleaner was going to be on my husband's phone so that he could control when the vacuuming actually got done. And we also then decided that ultimately the robot vacuum cleaner, because it could do the vacuuming and the mopping, it ended up being a better investment because it could do both of those things. We could set it to go in the middle of the night, which was great, or once kids were asleep. It meant that for us, it had less of my involvement in it, which made it a better investment. The flip side to that is because it was a lot of money up front, more planning had to actually go into budgeting and preparing for that purchase. Now, that's always something that we're going to talk about is the budgeting, the planning, and having those goals. But at the same time, actually just knowing what you're aiming for. And for us, it really was a case of then deciding the robot vacuum cleaner was worth it. And I can tell you that once we did make that purchase and we paid for it in cash, we saved up and we paid for it in cash. Once we made that purchase, it was the best decision. Our house got cleaned more often. We had guests that noticed that our floors were that little bit cleaner on those random times when they would just show up, which is something we always encourage our friends to do. And so we found that we were in a better headspace actually just living in a cleaner environment. And it wasn't because of a lack of attention. It was purely because, for me personally, I was the one that was doing the vacuuming and it wasn't a high priority for me. So it became a great opportunity to be able to exchange the funds, that over $2,000, for the benefit the vacuum cleaner, the robot vacuum cleaner and mop actually brought to the house. The plus side that was just an unintended consequence of the whole thing was that all of a sudden our kids were really excited by the vacuum cleaner as well. And so they really liked to help empty the vacuum cleaner out, and they would change the water for the mop and all these little things that really just helped to encourage them understand more about how a household works. So from our point of view, that return on investment was worth it. So let me provide a specific example of where the return on investment for trading of funds, for outsourcing of household tasks, perhaps hasn't worked, certainly for my family anyway. We have a car, like many people do. We're actually a one-car family. So our car gets quite dirty inside and out. What we used to do was we would clean the car at home. We would vacuum the car inside, we would wash the car on the outside, and we would do it on a relatively ad hoc basis. But being a one-car family, actually just having a nice car and having it feel nice and clean just makes you feel better. But we then found that we could go to a shopping centre, and in most shopping centres around Australia, they have car washing service within the shopping centre itself. And so we started to notice that there was a pattern emerging for how often we would go to a shopping centre. We would go every sort of couple of weeks. And so we then started to bring into that experience the fact that we would drop the car off at the car wash, we would go in, we would do all of our shopping, we would come out, our car would be nice and clean and shiny, we'd jump in it, we'd go home. And for a while, that was actually a really great use of time because a task was being done. Yes, we were paying for it, but it meant that we didn't have to do it ourselves. We were able to spend more time with our kids to be able to have fun, mostly jumping on a trampoline. However, that was for a period of time. Since then, we've actually moved house and a shopping centre isn't so close. What we've now discovered is that we either have to go back to cleaning the car ourselves, or we actually then have to go back to having somebody come to the house and clean and wash the car. The problem here is that in getting somebody to come and wash the car and vacuum the car, all of a sudden the cost is almost double what it was if we took the car with us to a shopping centre and had it done there. Now, the return on investment at that particular point in time, it's not worth it. So now our car doesn't get cleaned as often. And that's okay, because from our point of view, it isn't as big a priority. It isn't impacting our mental space so much so that we want to pay that amount of money. If it was a case of we found somewhere that was able to wash the car and clean the car, and maybe it was still only sort of $80 to $100, fine, we would pay that money. But when it's more than that, for us, for our point of view, it's not worth it. Yes, it's less than what we perhaps earn, per hour, but again, it's not worth it. So for us, that's being put onto the back burner. It's a household chore that we've decided it's going to get done at some point, but there isn't an urgency, there isn't a pattern for which we want that to be done. So how do you make some strategic choices about what tasks are worth prioritizing and what tasks aren't? Well, I would say the first way to do it is actually just to look at what are the main tasks that you're doing within your household. So it might be there's cooking, there's cleaning, there's gardening, there's tidying up, there's washing the car. There's a whole lot of different things that you do to make your household function. I would then say what you want to do is you want to prioritize those by how much time you're spending doing each of those tasks, and also how much you hate doing those tasks. Because there is a break-even point where there's an amount of time and an amount of hatred, or I guess the flip side of that is joy, for how much time you're actually spending on those tasks. So work out in order of priority. It may be that actually you don't mind cleaning the house, and that's fine. For some people, they actually don't mind it at all. But you may hate doing the gardening, in which case, hey, you know what? Jim's mowing. They could be the answer for you. And so actually going through, looking at how much time you're spending doing each of those household tasks, how much of that time you actually enjoy doing that job, and then looking at if you were to bring somebody in to do it for you, how much would that cost? So if you've ever wondered whether your time is well spent doing these household tasks, let's just recap and go over it one more time. So the first thing you want to do is you want to work out what is your hourly rate. You can go back, we talked about that. The next thing you want to do is you want to work out how much time you're spending doing the tasks that you hate. Next, you want to look at what is going to be the better return on investment for the tasks that you hate and the hourly rate it's going to cost to bring somebody in to help you with those. Now, the next thing is, perhaps if you have a partner, might be the harder one, is actually just sitting down and working out together, what do you want to get rid of? What is it that you're thinking you really would like some help with, and you want to test this out? Because the reality is, if you've watched this video all the way to the end, you're probably sitting there thinking, how on earth can I justify this to my partner? And at the end of the day, working out what that return on investment is going to be and what you will do with this time that you're going to save by having somebody else do that task. That's going to be the key to actually having somebody else do the task for you. Once you had that bit of a chat and you've worked out, okay, let's start with one thing first, I'd say give it a shot. Book it in, try it, see if you can actually enjoy having somebody else help you with some of those household tasks. But also monitor it. If it gets out of hand, stop doing it. You don't have to keep on doing it for the rest of your life. You may even decide, you know what, we're only going to bring in a cleaner for 12 months, or we're going to bring in a cleaner for 3 months. We're going to see how it goes, and at the end of that, we'll decide whether we want to keep on going or not. I know plenty of people that have brought in a cleaner for 12 months. Maybe they've had twins, they've decided they wanted the extra help. There are lots of different reasons for why having somebody come in and help you with household tasks is a really great return on investment. But you want to do the numbers. You want to make sure that whatever you decide to do is going to be the right thing for you, and you're getting a really clear return on that investment. Just work out, is it going to be the time? Is it worth the headspace? And good luck. Let us know what you choose in the comments.